You said something key earlier in our conversation that when it comes to this topic, context is important. Do you think when it comes to the Rafah invasion or this war as a whole, as we sit here 7 months out, do you think anything's missing from this conversation?
Well, I think a few of the items that I just mentioned, right? What comes after, right? Right now, the focus is laser focused on Rafah, which I think is appropriate, right? It's going to be an incredibly difficult situation. There are over 1 million civilians present in Rafah. There is, of course, still a Hamas presence in Rafah. But something that I've also been seeing and I've been following more closely is the fact that Hamas has reemerged in other parts of Gaza, right? It's been 7 months of war, but Israel has not yet brought the whole of Gaza under its control. It has not completely reduced the Hamas presence elsewhere in the territory. And there is a growing risk that even if Israel succeeds in eliminating or significantly degrading the Hamas presence in Rafah, Hamas itself will probably survive. The consensus from the beginning of the war is that Hamas is unlikely to be completely destroyed by military action. So even if the Rafah offensive takes place, even if it is largely successful, at least from Israel's point of view, will Israel succeed in its war aims in Gaza? It remains unclear whether the war can be won solely through military aims. Also, what happens to Gaza when the war is over, right? We've seen a lot of talk about a two-state solution. We've heard a lot of talk about setting up a post-war Gaza government, perhaps under the Palestinian Authority. This talk has been going on for months without any kind of real clear resolution. It remains very unclear as to who or what will govern Gaza and who will pay for its reconstruction. Those are the issues that I have been thinking about more recently as we get closer to a Rafah offensive.
You bring up a really good point of Hamas cropping up in other parts of Gaza, not Rafah exclusively. So I am curious, is this war only going to be over when all of Hamas is completely decimated? And is there any indication of when that would be?
It's very unclear what state Hamas is in currently, right? We know that it is still present in Rafah, that it still has a military organization there. Various leaders, including Yahya Sinwar, who masterminded the October 7th attack, remain at large, remain present, likely in Rafah, in entrenched positions. This is part of the reason why Israel is so focused on eliminating the Hamas position in Rafah. But as I mentioned, Hamas remains active elsewhere in Gaza. There are multiple areas where the Israeli military have moved in, eliminated the Hamas presence, declared victory, left, only for Hamas to reemerge several months, if not weeks later. So what happens to Hamas in the aftermath of a Rafah offensive remains unclear. There has been, I think, a broad consensus that eliminating it through military means is probably impossible, that there probably needs to be some kind of political process around eliminating Hamas entirely. But as I mentioned, there doesn't seem to be much progress right now about what happens in Gaza when the war is over. That, to me, is the crucial question that will resolve whether this war ends in victory for Israel or if it leads to a new, more uncertain, and more insecure status quo in the aftermath of the October 7th attack.